Hey everybody, this is Doomhammer giving you the overview of the upcoming season. We're just going to go through each team's roster so you have an idea as to where everybody is. So we'll take a look at Chicago first. You see Jason Campbell is going to be the starter despite his lower overall than Cutler, but he's made the playoffs twice for Chicago, so he's staying there. You got Mark Ingram, Justin Forsett, and they traded for Isaiah Crowell, so he was drafted by another team, and they decided that they had too many good running backs, so he ended up, instead of being on the practice squad or released, Chicago made a trade for him. Then you got Eddie Royal, Kelvin Benjamin, Snead, Victor Cruz, Tandon Doss. You see Jari Evans being the main offensive lineman, Andre Smith, David Deal, Dustin Keller at tight end. On the defense, we've got Justin Houston, Tommy Harris, Broderick Bunkley. I think that's Chandler Jones. Is it? It is Chandler Jones. And then we've got cornerbacks like Lito Shepard, Maxwell, Sean Smith. I think that's Cresden Butler. Michael or Malcolm Jenkins, Ryan Mundy, Keith Rivers, who's been with them for a while, Lofa Tatupu, Omar Gaither. Special teams, they're working with Morstead and Justin Medlock. So we'll switch on over to the Cincinnati Bengals. So, Bengals here. They've got quite the young squad. So they've got Derek Carr, Christian Ponder, and then Brady Quinn is injured. That's why he's bottom. But Carr will be the starter. We got Devontae Freeman, Latavius Murray, I don't know, whatever, Jefferson. They signed Golden Tate in free agency, so he's a great addition. Louis Murphy, Saunders, James Hardy, who was like a top guy with Matt Ryan, Justin Blackman, and then they got another tight end, Charles Clay, and he likely will be the starter over Luke Wilson. Then Lode Holt, Ben Grubbs, who used to be with the Ravens for many years, Anthony Costanzo, Laribius, and Leicester. As for their defense, again, they got a decent front seven now. I mean, they were a lot weaker. They have Brandon Spikes from Pittsburgh, so that's a great addition. They got Butler and Ogletree. Clowney's going to be their superstar, so glad that they were able to pick him up, and they were pairing him with Gerald McCoy. Then they've got Alvin Bailey, Lewis Moore, Terrell Troop. Desmond Trufant, Eric Wright have been their cornerbacks for quite a while. I think it's Aaron Williams. Yep. Aaron Williams. Gotta wait for this to load. And then McFadden. They got Barry Church, Sunsuri, Kenny Phillips, and Meeks. And then you got Johnny Hecker and David Bueller. Anyway, we're going to go and look at the Bills now. And so Buffalo, I mean, they've had a few changes, but the main thing here is that E.J. Manuel, the rookie last year, he is getting the start over Leftwich and then Connor Shaw. Javid Best joins them. They have the running back Carlos Hyde from Ohio State, D'Angelo Williams, who's been pretty good in his career. He's just, he's getting older and declining. Jacoby Jones has been their star receiver. Yeah, Danny Amendola, Swope, Cunningham, Kenny, I think it's, is it Kenny Moore? It's not Kasif Moore. Yeah. I was like, Kenny Moore's somewhere else. But Richie Incognito used to be a Pittsburgh Steeler. He's been an anchor for the Buffalo Bills for a bit. One of the best centers in the league. Anthony Collins, Jake Long, Jonathan Cooper, Dotson. Then their tight end, Kobe Fleener, Rob Hausler. Defense gets spread here of star devs. So they signed TJ Ward. They've got Tracy Porter, Kareem Jackson, Fleming, Swearinger and the defensive backs. They do have Coney Ely, who I will try to get more start time. Albert Hainsworth, Mabane, and then I think it's Daquan Jones, Whitney Merciless, Larry English, Durant, Smith, and Levy. Clearly, I think they were almost built for 4-3, but maybe they're under the Rex Ryan defense, so they were a 3-4. So I guess they probably need to do a better job getting more linebacker help, especially the middle linebackers, but they're pretty loaded with DTs. And then Pat O'Donnell and Blair Walsh. Now we'll flip on over to the Denver Broncos. So led by Doug Marrone and quarterback Sam Bradford. They've made the playoffs, which again, Bradford's first 2 seasons were garbage. Then he's turned it around. So right now they've got Bradford behind, and then Schaub and Core behind him. Bradshaw, who he doesn't normally play like an 89, but he is one of the best running backs in the league. He just doesn't always play that way. Monty Ball, Daryl Richardson. Brian Leonard is one of the best fullbacks in the league, and I use him quite frequently as a running back. We got AJ Green, Sanu, so the 2 Bengals are on the same team, but here in Denver instead. Jeremy Curley, they got Malcolm Kelly, who's been with Pittsburgh, the Patriots, tall receiver. In real life, he had like 3 seasons with the Washington Redskins before like having his career be over. So Kelly, in my franchise, is a lot more successful. But they got Zach Ertz, they got Zach Miller, Craig Stevens, and then their O-lines where they're kind of weak other than the left. You got Ferguson, DeBerkeshaw, one of the best. I think he's like behind Joe Thomas and maybe 1 or 2 other, like Andrew Whitworth or something. Then Josh Sitton, David Boz, Sila Tolu, and then James Carpenter. As we look here at the defense, they've got Brandon Graham, Luke Kuechly. I guess they have more than I thought they did. It is a pretty weak defense other than we look at Kuechly being an anchor linebacker. They got a solid pass rusher in Graham. Nolan Carroll, that's why Verrett was signed or drafted. He should be able to bring some youth and some, dev trait power to this very void squad. Jason Allen, Raheem Moore, I believe, Sensabaugh. They did also bring in Calvin Pryor III, so we'll see how their season goes. Maybe he'll get some more playing time. Bierman, Balmer, Brandon Williams. Then I think it's Eric Johnson and Dustin Hopkins. That's your Denver Broncos. Now we'll go to my Cleveland Browns. Yes, I have Brian Dable as the face because it's Mike Pettin in his first season. Now the Browns did something that I did not expect them to do. Those of you who've been following the series, and that's getting a franchise quarterback. I drafted Terrell Pryor in the 3rd round, expecting it to be a bad pick because, he didn't really turn into that great of a quarterback. But now he's an 86 overall. He was Rookie of the Year, rushed for over 1,000 yards in his rookie season, and he's their guy. So I accidentally got the Cleveland Browns a quarterback. But he's ahead of Josh Johnson, Dennis Dixon. They brought in Tim Hightower, who was the running back for the Rams. High overall, but kind of like Ahmad Bradshaw. For some reason, just doesn't run very well. So he's high overall, but doesn't play that well. They have Willis McGahee, the veteran. Alfred Blue, the rookie. Finley, another. I don't know if he's a rookie or like a sophomore, like a second-year person. They had that trade for Andre Johnson. They drafted Marquise Lee, and then they signed Johnny Knox, Charles Johnson, David Osbury. They actually drafted Dwayne Allen in the 1st round of the 2012 NFL draft. He was like a 3rd-round pick for the Colts because the Colts drafted both Dwayne Allen and Kobe Fleener in real life. But the Browns took a leap on a tight end, and he's actually been pretty solid for them. Of course, Joe Thomas, best left tackle in the league. I think it's Marquise Pouncey. Yeah, Marquise Pouncey. So instead of getting Alex Mack, they end up getting Marquise Pouncey, so I think that's a good swap. Now they got Max Jean Gillies. They kind of downgraded a bit because they used to have Shane Olivier, who went to the Lions. He's the best right tackle in the league. Sean Andrews was a former Baltimore Ravens guard, so kind of like what they did with Steinbach when he was a Bengal, went to the Browns. But Bakhtiari was the backup for Shane Olivier, and I decided that Olivier, even though he's the best right tackle in the league, it's time to let him go and let Bakhtiari take the starting job for Cleveland. And they fill that void of losing some guards with Andrews. On defense, they have B.J. Raji, and he was supposed to be the Phil Taylor of the group, but Phil Taylor was a 2nd-round pick, and so they have some pretty, I don't know if they're solid, but they had some pretty decent defensive tackles, but it's anchored by B.J. Raji. He's a real-life Packer, but went to Cleveland, and haven't looked back. He's been pretty much of a good run stopper for them. One of the best DTs in the league. Then we got, I think it's Jerry Hughes there from the Patriots. We got Paul Kruger, Daryl Tapp. I think someone might be injured, which is why they're not showing up. And then you got Justin Gilbert, the real-life pick. We'll see how he does in this franchise. Terrell Brown, McLean, Malcolm Butler, Buster Screen. As for linebackers, they got Bruce Carter, who didn't turn out very well in real life. He's actually doing pretty well for the Browns. He's been a solid middle linebacker. They signed Darrell Washington, the veteran, so this is actually a good move by Mike Pettin and squad. They had John Beeson and Nick Perry. Actually, just going through this with all of you, I'm starting to see the Browns could have one of the best linebacking cores in the league. I mean, they're all 80s and above. You got Matt Elam and Kerry Rhodes, and Clinton Dix and Jarrett Bush. There as, I think it's Jarrett Bush. Is it Jarrett Bush? Josh Bush, excuse me. And so, actually, Cleveland's defense is looking better than I thought they were. They are I think they were like a top 10 defense last year, I believe. And so I'm starting to see why. Now they're going from a 4-3 to a 3-4. And I think that's probably what happened is they went to a 3-4, and now they have 4 80-plus linebackers. I think there's some more overall boost that's helping them out. Like, yeah, okay. So they're not all 80s. There's some overall boost that's helping them. And then they've got John Ryan and Alex Henry as their special teamers. So those are my Browns. And they have made the playoffs once in this franchise. Every team has made the playoffs once. And now some have made it more frequently. No team has made it every time. Every team has missed the playoffs once, and every team has made the playoffs once. But now we're going to go to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So they're led by Blaine Gabbert, Landry Jones, and then Coleman at quarterback. As you can obviously see, Darren McFadden is the number one running back in the league. He is the LaDainian Tomlinson. He is the Adrian Peterson. I mean, we have Adrian Peterson in the league, and he's been good, but it's been Darren McFadden as the guy. They have Frank Gore filling in for Javid Best, who left them. Then Spencer Ware. They got Jerome Simpson, Kenny Stills, Josh Gordon, who's been lights out when he plays. I've been trying to follow his suspension history. So it's not this season, but next season is the one where he's supposed to be suspended all year. And we'll see. I mean, I'll mark him as injured, and we'll put him on IR, and he's done. But for that year, I mean, he might be able to come back because he's been fantastic to play with. We got Owen Daniels, the veteran tight end, Orson Charles, and we see, I forget which Davis that is. It's not Anthony Davis. Maybe it is. It is Anthony Davis, right. So Anthony Davis, right tackle, pretty solid O-line for them. We see Brandon Brooks. We see Jason Peters, the veteran. Sam Baker. Weakness there is a center. We got Jason Spitz. We probably could do a little bit better, but hey, you know what? The guards and the tackles are good. We're going to stick with that. Then on defense, we got pass rushers like Kawan Short. He shouldn't be there. Let's do a quick generate lineup. Okay, we're going to fix some of these. So Stephen Bowen, Kawan Short, Tyson Alualu, Matt Shaughnessy. Not really the best. I mean, okay, there it is. Mark Anderson is their top pass rusher. I was wondering where he was, so he's injured. And then we have Derek Johnson. They drafted Anthony Barr. They've had Geno Hayes for quite a while. Mark Barron, Louis Delmas, Ladarius Webb, who was the Defensive Player of the Year last year. And then we see Rashad Breeland. We got Simon and Gator. And then Dominic Rogers-Cromartie. He's injured, but it's normally Webb and Cromartie. Very solid defense for them. NFC South has a lot of good defensive players. And then Cyfries and Nicholas Seta are the two special teamers. Then we'll move on to the Arizona Cardinals. So they are the reigning Super Bowl champions. They got a tough matchup against the Eagles in their first outing coming up in week 1. But we've got Andy Dalton, Derek Anderson, the only two quarterbacks on this team. No Sean Marino coming over from the Bengals. They got Beanie Wells, LaMichael James, McCluster, all running backs here. Let me double check if I can do a quick reset. Mike Wallace, who's had an outstanding season last year. Devin Aroma-Shodu coming from the Giants and Colts. He's had like a decent career there. Quincy Enunwa, Chris Givens, Jernigan, Troy Williamson. Leonard Pope comes over from the Patriots. Now, Leonard Pope was drafted by the Cardinals in real life. The 6'8" tight end. He really got a great career in New England, much better than he did in real life when he was with the Cardinals. But near the latter part of his career, he leaves the Patriots because they couldn't pay him, and now he goes to the Cardinals. So struggle here is left tackle. Quan Gio is the rookie, first-round pick. We'll see how he holds up as left tackle. You got Matt Slauson, Nick Mangold, Logan Mankins, and King Dunlap. So their tackles are their weak point, but they got their the center and a right guard, two of the best in the league. Defense, they've got Richard Sherman. They've got Darius Butler. They have Darius Slay, Chris Gamble. So look at that. I mean, that's 4 of their cornerbacks are 79 and above, all with dev traits. And then Bowie, I think, was a free agent that was young that they just brought in. Then they got Justin Smith. I think it's, which Jones is that? The Tone Jones. So they are 3-4, even though I think I don't know how my scheme fits work. I guess I do. Jason Allen, Marcel Darius in the center, McCullers and Babineau right there. We got Navarro Bowman, DOC, Dakota Watson, and David Harris. All very solid linebackers for them in this 3-4 set. They got Harrison Smith along with Tyrann Mathieu for safeties, and then Pauluscu and Steven Gostkowski. So they got rid of Dan Carpenter after missing extra points in both the NFC Championship game and the Super Bowl. So they bring in the AFC Championship Super Bowl kicker, Steven Gostkowski from the Oakland Raiders. So they get one of the best kickers in the league, so that's a good upgrade for the Super Bowl champs. Now we're looking at the San Diego Chargers. San Diego Chargers have Aaron Rodgers. Again, he has had a very Aaron Rodgers career. Even though he's never had a Super Bowl in my franchise, he is one of the best in the league, but still struggles to actually win in the playoffs. Tony Romo behind him with Levi Brown. Now, let's see. Let me reset this a bit. There we go. Arian Foster, Drake Bell, Jerick McKinnon, Chris Rainey, running back for San Diego. And then Santonio Holmes is now paired with Jeremy Maclin. They had Devin Hester for many years, and Hester, again, very speedy, and he's kind of been a number 2, number 3 receiver. But now Rodgers has 2 similar style wideouts on both sides. And then they have Devon Bess, Dwayne Harris, and I forget which Dorsey that is, but they have some other options in the slot, but they can keep Holmes and Maclin on both wings. You got Riley Reif, McGlynn, Rob Sims, Petrus, and TJ Lang. Again, not the best O-line here. Decent bookends tackles. Riley Reif young, he can improve a lot. TJ Lang already kind of in that 82 range. Antonio Gates, who's declining, he's there. We do have Jordan Reed, but he's been injured. He's a superstar dev. He's supposed to be the one to fill in for Gates when Gates eventually retires. Because let's see, Gates is 34 years old, right? So Jordan Reed is the backup plan because I think he's in his sophomore year now. His second season. Yep. So he's rookie year last year, and somehow he's a superstar. I don't know why he's a superstar, but hey, I guess he caught some fire. Then we look at their defense. Again, not the best defense by far. They got Chris Houston, Ryan, Antoine Cason, Alvin Branch, Alvin Woods, Thomas, I think it's Gertrell or something like that, Johnson. Jamie Collins Sr., one of their better linebackers. They do have C.J. Mosley. I forgot if I flipped this to... Yeah, okay. I think C.J. Mosley might be... I might put him at like outside. So they have another linebacker strength, so we get Mosley some more playing time. But Vilma, who's been a solid anchor for the Chargers for many, many seasons, good veteran middle linebacker. And we see Antoine Bethea, and we have Mitchell as the 2 safeties. And then we have Jones and Randy Bullock as their kicker and punter. So we'll see how the Chargers team does. Then we got Raheem Morris taking over this dumpster fire Kansas City Chiefs. There's a lot of stuff done here to try to fix them up. Let's see how they did and how they're looking. So we've got Blake Bortles, who was their first-round pick. They had 3rd overall. Trent Richardson from before. He is actually not as bad as he was in real life. He's actually gotten some decent moments. They have C.J. Anderson, who I'm surprised is rated so low. I thought C.J. Anderson was a better running back than maybe the Madden modding community thought he was, because I thought he would be at least in the 60s, but he's a 55 overall. They do have Lawrence Vickers, one of the better fullbacks in the league at that time. That was the former Cleveland Brown. He has been aging, though. Justin Hunter has been one of their top receivers. Brian Hartline, we see Martin, Andre Roberts. But as for offensive line, they're doing pretty well. Brandon Albert, Bushrod, their center's weak with Brandon Jones, Chris Myers, and then Barksdale. So they might need some help on like that right tackle or center at some point. Kyle Rudolph is their tight end, so hopefully he has a better career with Bortles than he did with Brandon Weeden last year. As for their defense, which they used to be like a really ironclad, tough defense, and the reason was because of Jonathan Joseph and Tim Jennings. They even had somebody else, I forget who he was off the top of my head, but he was like an 88 overall. I know it was Ty Law, I think. It was something crazy where they had like 3 of like the best cornerbacks in the league. Now they still have 2 90 plus cornerbacks, along with Jarius Byrd. They've got Bolden, we have, I think it's Myron Lewis, Brooks, Emerson. They have their pass rusher, who's Jason Pierre-Paul, and then D'Amato Pico and Jonathan Hankins. You got Ziggy Hood as the other defensive end. Now, they try to improve their linebacking core. Again, this is probably one of the weaker ones. Arthur Moats. Whoops, wrong button. Arthur Moats, Marvin Mitchell, McCarthy, Moak. We got Tevin Smith. Yeah, Telvin Smith. So hopefully Telvin Smith, I might actually, depending on how their season does, if he starts off pretty, like they're pretty weak, I might just replace Moak or Moats with Telvin, and even maybe get Brown some playing time just so that they can benefit from their dev traits. And then we got Suckup and Colquitt as their special teamers. Now we move to the Indianapolis Colts. It used to be Bill Cowher. Now it's Norv Turner. I may have to change his headshot there. But we look at the Colts and how they've transformed since Peyton Manning left. They made the playoffs immediately after the season Manning was injured, and that was with Brady Quinn, which is why Brady Quinn was so still irrelevant, because I thought Brady Quinn would suck, and then he actually took them to the playoffs. Then it was the year after that is when he sucked, and then Kirk Cousins got a few starts. So Cousins is the starter for the Colts. He's starting way, way sooner than he did in real life. So it's Cousins, Tyrod Taylor, and Tolson. Chris Johnson, one of the best running backs in the league, right behind Darren McFadden. We see Theo Reddick, and then Bruce. Is it Bruce? Brandon Bolden. And then we've got wide receivers of Pierre Garçon, PK Sam, and this guy was Mr. Irrelevant from 2003 or 2004. 2004. And he's actually made quite a career for himself, being the last pick of the draft. Hankerson, Cordell Patterson. I think Patterson's going to be the starter over him. Let's see, did I generate best lineup? I did not. And so Evan Britton, Evan Mathis, Jeremy Zuta, Zach Martin, who's a great pick for them. He's going to be one of the best in the league, no doubt, in a bit. Geoff Schwartz, and then they got Jeremy Shockey, Tammy, and I think it's Evan Rodriguez. So Jeremy Shockey there, he getting old. They're going to need a new tight end soon. Then we look at their defense. They got DeMarcus Lawrence, Ryan Kerrigan, and then I think it's Antonio Johnson. So pretty solid linemen. They got Dre Kirkpatrick, Jefferson, Spivey, Powers, Lane at corner, DeCowd, and Will Moore. They used to have Brandon Merriweather when, like, the Manning years, and he was fantastic. He's one of the best safeties in the league, but he left them, obviously, and so they've been having a hard time recuperating that. DeQuell Jackson, Cleveland Browns legend, has been with the Colts his entire career in this franchise. He is their anchor middle linebacker. They're in the 3-4. They got Sean Witherspoon, also very vital, and then they are kind of weaker with their right and second middle linebacker. I think that's Chris Smith, I think. And then we got their special teamers, Mike Nugent, one of the best kickers in the league, and I think it's Sean Martin or some Martin. If you care very much about my punters, I will give you an in-depth review of my punters and kickers. But we'll move on to the Commanders. First season after moving on from Michael Vick as their quarterback. They're still rocking with Marty Morningway. However, he could be fired at the end of this season, if I can learn how to talk right. And so we'll see if he continues as head coach, if this team does not make the playoffs. But they got Trent Edwards, so place your bets now, everybody. Is Trent Edwards going to take this team to the playoffs? They got Johnny Manziel. Could Johnny Manziel take them to the playoffs, Mr. 55 overall? Or can Austin Davis take them to the Super Bowl? No, probably not. Mike Goodson. We see, I think it's Bryce Brown, Charles Sims. They got Deontay Thompson, Evans. Brandon LaFell is supposed to be their second wide receiver. They got Jones Baldwin, and then Vincent Jackson, who came over here in free agency, I think a year ago. No idea why he did that. I don't see this team as an ideal team to go to. But they got Lane Johnson, Boone, Pollack, Trey Turner, who's a good late-round pick. He's going to be a good starter for them. Derek Sherrod. But then here's their superstar, Travis Kelce. I kind of feel bad for the bro because, let's just say, Commanders are right now not looking too good moving forward. And then you've got some unique defensive stars here. So they got one in every level. They've got Derek Morgan, or is it Derek or is it Dan? It is Derek Morgan. I was correct. I know my league. But yeah, you try to keep track of 32 teams. And so we've got Derek Morgan. He's with Derek Wolf, McGee, and Frosty Rucker, who's been actually quite fantastic for them. He's a long-standing career commander, and he's been doing great. Then they've got in their linebacking core, Donta Hightower, A.J. Hawk, and I think that's Marcus Smith. And so Hawk is getting older, so he's starting to decline. But you got Hightower, middle linebacker, Morgan, pass rusher, Entree Roll, cornerback. So they got one good player in each of these positions. They got Middleton, Johnson, Chekwa. I think it's some other Brown, Chris Chekwa Brown maybe. Then they do have Rodney Poole, who was a Cleveland Brown originally in real life, but the Cleveland Browns went with Sean Taylor, who was the famous Redskins player who was killed. Or not killed, I'm sorry. He had like a car accident or something. And so I did have him actually die in the game, so the Browns lost him after a few seasons, Sean Taylor, that was. And so since the Commanders didn't get Sean Taylor, they got Rodney Poole. He's injured right now, but he's their normal safety. Then there's Bruton and Brooks. As for special teamers, we got Pat Anger and Nate Kading. Then we're going to move on to the Cowboys. Dallas Cowboys, led by Coach Mike Shanahan. He's had some mediocre seasons, but had the first winning season they've had since they made the playoffs in like 2007, I think it was. So Russell Wilson, Ryan Fitzpatrick. So two solid quarterbacks there. Fitzpatrick and Wilson don't have the same style, but they've been working well. Adrian Peterson, again, still a good running back. He's not as good as McFadden or Chris Johnson. Deji Karim from Buffalo and James White. I am really excited for Larry Fitzgerald and Russell Wilson. They have Kendall Wright, who was their draft pick to try to be the guy at wide receiver. But when they were able to pull in Larry Fitzgerald among all those competitors, I think Dallas is in for a solid year. And then Aldrick Robinson, Marquise Goodwin, I think it's Derek Hagan. And then we have Casey, and then we have Ebron, and Ebron will be the starter. We got Alex Mack that they signed in free agency. They got Dwayne Brown, and they had Dwayne Brown and Ramirez and Ijalana, but they signed Breezel and Mack, so that really helped anchor their offensive line. So, yay, Adrian Peterson and Russell Wilson are excited for the pass and rush blocking that's going to be taking place. Then we've got their defense. They got Eric Berry as the free safety, Eric Weddle at strong safety. So two fantastic safeties, along with Alford and Justin Smith. They got Allen, Harris, Sweeten. Then in their linebacking core, they got the rookie of the year, Barkevious Mingo. So had Barkevious Mingo gone to Dallas and not Cleveland in real life, his career would be different. So somehow Mingo got rookie of the year. He had a lot of sacks. And that's probably because you look at who's around him. Daniel Ellerbe, Jenkins, they just got Brock Kennard. They got Thomas Howard now. He's the best linebacker of the crew. And then in their front, the first three there, you got McLean, Branch, Calais Campbell, who came over from the Eagles a year or two ago, and Charles Johnson. So good pass rushers in front three, and then Mingo is the guy that can break free when they're doing a coverage sack because Barry, Weddle, Alfred, and Smith are keeping everybody in line. So good defense there. Cairo Santos and Podlesh are the special teamers for Dallas. They've been always the younger brother there in the NFC East. We'll see if they can pass the Eagles this year. Now we're going to take a look at Miami. Miami is best known for Jim Harbaugh and Cam Newton. So Cam Newton, one of the best quarterbacks in the league, if you saw that video. Tim Tebow behind him, Garrett Gilbert. They've got Matt Forte, Joe McKnight, Ryan Williams. They also have Calvin Johnson Jr., who came over from the Cardinals to the Dolphins. Kind of ironic that he left Arizona, and Arizona won a Super Bowl without him. Then you got Jordy Nelson, Devin Hester, who came over from the Chargers, A.J. Jenkins, Michael Jenkins, Trent Williams, Urbic, Olsen, Nix, Trueblood. He's also got Pinkston there, and Barkley. Their tight end is Tyler Eifert. So, again, a friend, Fred Davis. They've got a lot of great weapons on this Miami Dolphins team. We'll see how they come out this year. They were the number one team last year in the AFC. And they might have even been with the league between them and the Cardinals. But then they got Owusu Ansah, who used to be a Cleveland Brown cornerback in this franchise. Trumaine Brock. We got Michael Gilchrist, Boykin, Jabril Wilson, Prozinski, Quinn, Schweigert as defensive backs. Bruce Irvin, who went to the Seahawks way earlier than people expected in real life. That was Pete Carroll's selection. Then they got Mike Patterson, Jarvis Jenkins. John Jenkins? John Jenkins. John Jenkins there on the interior. Then we continue to look at our team. Lamar Woodley, Antoine Barnes. They're anchored by James Laurinaitis. And then they just drafted Atochu, I think, in the second round. They got Lance Briggs, Middleton, so some veterans as well. Their kicker punter is McBriar and Dan Carpenter from the Cardinals, the one that missed a few valuable kicks. But they're taking a flyer with them. And then we've got the Philadelphia Eagles. They won the Super Bowl 2 years ago. Andy Reid, Donovan McNabb are the ones that are leading this team still. We see Donovan McNabb, 86 overall, despite being quite the veteran at 37 years old. He still has got those moves. He's still throwing the ball well. Teddy Bridgewater is right behind him, so we'll see if he is able to get that starting job maybe next year. If McNabb goes down, but Bridgewater fits that style well as a good backup. And here's what I love about the Eagles. They have Deshaun Jackson, Ted Ginn Jr., and they traded for Travis Benjamin. 3 receivers who have like 97, 99 speed. So they are a speedy team. They also have Janis. They got Beasley. So it's kind of like Tyreek Hill times 3, or times 2 probably, because I don't think Benjamin's Tyreek Hill type, but he's that type of speed. And then you got Giovanni Bernard, Alfred Morris, Atkinson at running back. Really, it's Bernard. They used to have Frank Gore, and then Gore got older, and so they decided to replace him with Bernard. They also had to do a lot of replacements to the draft over the years because McNabb, Jackson, Ginn command so much money. So I'm basically replacing through the draft, and I can't really... It's hard to bring in good free agents to this team because of so much talent that's all the cap is going to. But they do have Marcus McNeil, who's their normal left tackle. Then they have, they did draft Gabe Jackson, who's going to be a good starter for them coming up. Menelik Watson. They got Donald Thomas, Michael Ruse. Then Heath Miller, the loyal tight end, Moeki and Kesa. So Heath Miller's been pretty good for them. Real life Pittsburgh Steeler. As for their defense, they got Allen and Luigit in this as DTs. Robert Ayers. I think there's what is his first name? Melvin Ingram III. He's one of their top pass rushers, problem causers for the offense. Cohen, the Golston. They do have Stephon Gilmore, Nickel, Roby Coleman, Brinkley, but Leotis McKelvin's the other cornerback with Moore. Then there's Ishmael. And their safeties aren't so great here with the strong safety, but they do make up for it with Earl Thomas III, the best safety likely in the league. They got Ray Maluga. They've got KJ Wright and, Melvin Ingram is not injured. He's their outside linebacker. I'm an idiot. It is Robert Ayers as their pass rusher. But Ingram there on the right outside linebacker, KJ Wright, and Maluga. Kind of like the Browns, except Browns have 4 80-plus linebackers. They've got 3 80-plus linebackers. And they've got Zach Hoker and I forget Schmidt. But point is, they're not very good special teamers because their cap space is very tight. And we're trying to keep that for players that are normally on the field for the majority of the game. We'll see if that comes back to haunt them if they need like the game-winning kick. But we've got the Falcons, when we see Peyton Manning in the decline, and behind him is Jimmy Garoppolo. So I think he's going to be a better replacement than Brock Osweiler was in real life, and that's what Denver tried. Then we got Le'Veon Bell. I don't know. Let's reset this. James Starks. Then we got, I think it's Devin Thomas. Well, let's double check his name. DeAnthony Thomas, excuse me. So DeAnthony Thomas. They also have Terrence West. Then as for receivers, they lost Fitzgerald. Now they have Emmanuel Sanders. They still have Braylon Edwards, Butler, Meacham, Josh Morgan, Shipley. Julius Thomas as a tight end with Brandon Myers and Billy Bajima. Bajima was a Patriot tight end for many years, went to Cleveland for a bit. Now he's the third stringer there in Atlanta. And they've got Nate Soldier, Louis, John Sullivan, Ornberger, and then DJ Fluker. Not the best O-line, but you could definitely do worse. Jabal Sheard, Worthy, Earl Mitchell, Cliff Averill, and Studebaker. So they got some decent, all mid-tier kind of pass rushers there. Sheard's pretty solid. I know he's a Cleveland Brown in real life. And then we've got Johnson, Cromartie, another C. Brown. We got Aaron Colvin, Rashad Jones, and Cam Chancellor, who's never turned into the Cam Chancellor of the Dirty Birds, the Seattle Seahawk squad. And then you got the Bob Sanders and Johnson. As for linebackers, they get Perry Riley Jr. at middle linebacker, Nick Roach, and they have Zach Brown. Not the best linebacking core either. We see, I think it's Josh Reed and Reggie Hodges as their special teamers. Moving forward, we got the San Francisco 49ers, led by Tom Coughlin and Drew Brees. They've made 3 Super Bowls, won 2 of them. So we've got Brees there, and behind him is Bruce Gradkowski, Brad Sorensen. They got MJD, they traded for last year. He's been pretty solid for them. Dion Lewis, Antonio Pittman. They do have Des Bryant, Alshon Jeffrey, Jordan Matthews, you see Benford, and then Roddy White, kind of more of a backup. As he's regressed horribly. He never actually did that well anywhere he went. He was with the Chiefs for a while. Then he went to Cleveland, had a 1,000-yard season for the Cleveland Browns. But since he's older, Cleveland wanted to go younger at wide receiver. So the 49ers pick up the veteran to be depth on their team. And they got Brent Selleck, Stalker, and Brad Smelly. They traded for Donald Penn. They traded away a decent pick for him because they needed that solid left tackle. They got Kyle Long, Looney, Justin Smiley, and Ducassi as their O-line. Looking at our safeties, we got Brandon Merriweather, the former Colt, and Roman Harper, so they've been pretty solid for them. And then you look at our cornerbacks. Ashton Yabuti was a second-round pick who just caught fire somehow. You've probably never heard of him, but I guess in this franchise, Yabuti is one of the better players. And then you got Brent Grimes, McGill, Prince Amukamura, and Poyer. And so I think what was interesting about this was I drafted Amukamura when there was like all these great cornerbacks. And now as the team progressed, now he's their starter. And he's transitioned to be that solid starter for them. Again, he's one of the top in the league at 82 overall. He's not like a 90, but he's been a solid contributor. And then they've got Cameron Hayward, Devon Still, Haloti Nada, Everett Brown. So a pretty solid front 7 there. And then their linebackers are kind of the weak point. So they got Brandon Marshall and Brooks. But then they just drafted Ryan Shazier, who's going to be an anchor for this team for many, many years. Unlikely to have that career-ending injury he suffered in real life, especially in the video game. Then we got Andy Lee and Brandon McManus as their punter and their kicker. Probably some of the better special teamers compared to some of these other teams. I noticed that kickers and punters do not progress very well going from season to season. We're going to go check out the Giants real quick. So New York, they'd had Carson Palmer before. Now, even though O'Connell is the higher overall, Matt Barkley is the starter. I know he's 63 overall. But again, I try to play this franchise not based off of their overall, but based off of their performance and how they play. So Kevin O'Connell is still in the league because he was the starter for the Titans for many years and took them to the playoffs. He was actually like a Christian Ponder, where Ponder had like 4 seasons in his rookie year, took his team to the playoffs, but they moved on from him. Kevin O'Connell's the same way, except he was a backup in Kansas City, did actually start a few games. So he's a reliable kind of journeyman quarterback. But they're going with Barkley because they drafted him last year to be that sort of future of the franchise. And we will see if Barkley can rise to the occasion. Now, they also have Jeff Smoker, who's been kind of my career backup. I don't know how he stayed in the league. You've never heard of him before. I've never heard of him before. But he's been around for a while in my franchise. Then they've got Ryan Matthews. I'm not trying to move him, sorry. Tawan Jones, Gray. But really, it's Michael Bush, who's the second running back. Because if it's not Ryan Matthews running the ball, I'm running it with Michael Bush. Then they drafted Odell Beckham Jr., so you're welcome, Giants fans. Niles Paul Aberderis, another, I think, 7th-round pick. Brandon Quick, Josh Boyce. They do have Jimmy Graham and Teo Johnson. Teo Johnson's the other tight end that's been around the league. He was with the Carolina Panthers for years. The Browns, a good starting tight end. I think like a 2nd-round pick in 2003. But they also have Luke Jokel, who, again, is not really that great of a left tackle, but he's in the 2nd season, so he's the man right now. Clemente, Cush, John Greco moved from tackle to guard. And then Marcus Gilbert. So they're better on the tackles than they are interior. But again, this team went from being a playoff Super Bowl contender. They went to back-to-back Super Bowls with Matt Schaub years ago. They're starting that decline. As we look at their defense, very similarly, they used to be a top defense. Now they're sort of all over the place. You had Okoye and Glenn Dorsey, which, again, Glenn Dorsey hasn't really progressed well with them. You've got Martin Lynch, Adrian Claiborne, Bourne, Square, Woodyard, Hogue, Niles, Podlesny, the best, best defensive player they've got. Jackson, which Jackson's this? Tenard Jackson at their strong safety position. They're also looking at, go back to defense. Burnett, Dante Robinson, Nnamdi Asamoah, Bentley. So there's a lot that needs to be filled here. Jim Caldwell is their coach, so he might be on the hot seat soon. They do have one, the Iron Leg, Sebastian Janikowski, and then I think it's Matt Allen at punter. Moving through, I know this is a long video. You probably put this on 2 times fast if you want to get through it faster, but or you just go to the team that you care about. But we're going to go now to the Jacksonville Jaguars. So they're in a similar situation where they are starting a quarterback that's not the higher overall. They're actually starting Colt McCoy because he was the one that took them to 8 wins last year. Nick Foles could very well step in. I'm surprised he's star dev, but Nick Foles might get the start at some point over Colt McCoy if they're trying to move forward. But he's been developing these past few years, so maybe it's been good that he hasn't been thrown to the Lions den too quickly. Because he did start a few games, did poorly, and then McCoy came in, and then McCoy had the whole season last year. But DeMarcus Murray, Pyramid Barner, Felton at fullback. They have, I'm forgetting his first name, Tavon Austin, the speedster at wide receiver. They also have Anthony Gonzalez from Cleveland. They drafted Allen Robinson. They've got Steve Smith, the one that was from the Giants, and then Chris Owusu, who I've tried to get more action because he was like a mid-round pick, trying to get more action from him. Then they got Matt Khalil, who lost his dev trait, apparently. Larry Warford, Mike Pouncey, Osemele, Greg Robinson, and then Deion Sims at tight end. And he's someone that I did not expect to do well, but he was a late-round pick tight end, and he became star dev from last season to this season. So good for this guy. He's a second, third-round tight end, someone that was not he's probably like a second, third-string tight end his entire career, but here he's a starter in Jacksonville, and he's getting the starter treatment. So I love how... this is what I love about this 32-team franchise, is that there are players that weren't good that are in real life, or they weren't like an ideal starter, and they're starters in my franchise. So anyway, as for defense, they're not bad. They're not that bad. Chris Long. Their DTs are pretty weak with Marks and Dial, but they got Tamba Hawley, and they've got Chris Long. Then safeties, they've got McDonald Jr. and Michael Griffin. Then they've got Patrick Willis, right there anchor, best middle linebacker in the league, and Sean Lee, Sergio Kindle. But then they also have Fabian Washington, Gaines, Patrick Robinson as corner. So they probably could do a little better with some depth at cornerback and defensive tackle. But Patrick Willis anchors the team. Griffin anchors the defensive backs. And then they've got 2 good pass rushers in Holly and Chris Long. And then Nick Folk and Hansen are their 2 special teamers. We're going to keep this going now with the New York Jets, led by Chip Kelly. Excuse me. Got a little drink. And so we've got the New York Jets with Alex Smith, the best quarterback in the league. Behind him is Clemens and Nassib. They've got Clinton Portis at running back. He is getting older. They do have Andre Brown and Powell. But I think how old is he now? 33. So he's still chugging away. He's been kind of like the LaDainian Tomlinson of my franchise. So he's still there, but I do think that they probably need to work on getting another running back. This was a bad running back class, so maybe they could be in the run for like Todd Gurley or someone like that. We'll have to see in the 2015 draft. But they got Percy Harvin, and they signed Antonio Brown. They got Jarius Wright, Wes Welker, Marcus Wheaton, Dante Moncrief. So that's their wide receivers. Mercedes Lewis back from 2006. Probably another player that is getting up there. Yeah, he's 30 now. So yeah, this team had a window for the Super Bowl, and they just missed it. I got Eugene Monroe, Foster, Wisniewski, Kevin Zeitler, and then Giasamini. Some of the backups there. I don't know how much you care about some of them. But they're getting older, and they're missing their window. But then you've got Klug and Kiwanuka, who's been like a defensive player the year before. Ndamukong Suh and Hicks. I think it's Julius Jenkins. D. Milliner and Darqueze Dennard, Mike Jenkins at their corners. So they got some good profile names there. They're just not panning out very well. You got DeJuan Morgan. He used to be the backup safety for Brandon Merriweather, so he never got to play. Then he went to the Jets to be the starter. Or he went to somewhere else to be the starter. Didn't do too well. Now he's at the Jets, not obviously looking like he's going to do too well. Taylor Mays, you got Zombo, Kirk Morrison, David Hawthorne, Michael Kendricks. So, yeah, they're not looking as good as I thought they were. But Scobie and Plackmeyer, their offense does have a lot of weapons, which is what carries them. But they were in a really difficult division. The AFC East is really tough. Now we'll go to Detroit. They're the team that shocked everybody last year, went 1-5 and then 11-6, making the NFC Championship game. Led by Tannehill, they got Stanton and Whedon. Reggie Bush, the longtime running back for the Lions, and he's been great for them. He has not been hurt that often, which in his real career he was injured. Jaquez Rogers, Lachey Seastrunk. They got Darius Hayward-Bade, Hill, Pettis, Kenny Britt, Mario Manningham. They got Todd Heap, the veteran that's not actually his face, Joe Klopfenstein, and John Carlson. They have Tyrone Smith, who is a pretty good anchor for them. They signed the Browns' Shane Olivier, the best right tackle in the league. So that's a huge upgrade for them. So good. Tannehill's got some more protection. Ayupati, Blaylock, and Schwenke is their interior. Then we look at defense. A lot of studs here. So we got Deion Jordan and Daquan Bowers. They're both star dev, but they're that mid-tier 70s, and they've been pretty good. You got Kyle Williams and Jernigan. I think Kyle Williams is getting older now. Is that why he's lost his dev trait? Yeah, he's 31 now, so he's old man Kyle Williams there in Detroit. They also have Casey Hayward, Brandon Carr, Frederick, Van Dyke, Dixon, Eric Reed, Bethel. They just drafted him, I think. Ward. Yeah, this is Jimmy Ward. They just brought him on as strong safety, so I thought he'd be maybe a dev trait, but he's not. Big star is Lawrence Timmons, and then they signed Brian Orakpo. So Timmons has been a hard hitter for Detroit, X-Factor linebacker, but now they've got Orakpo, so another big dude for this team. He probably could be a pass rusher, but like a defensive end. But they do have Arno and Vontez Burfict. And then looking at their special teams, they got McCaffrey and Sturgis. So that's your Detroit Lions. Now we're going to switch on over to the next team, Green Bay Packers. Let's see how their roster shakes up. This is a team that has had so much talent for so many years, and they just don't win. Mike Tomlin is fired, so then we have Jeep Christ that's now in charge of them. They now have Eli Manning, who has a high overall, but has recently sucked. He kind of bounced around a bit after his Kansas City days. And they got Brock Osweiler they traded for, so a younger option. And Matt McGloin, which, he's not going to do much. You got LeSean McCoy, Ivory Hillman. They do have one of the better fullbacks, Vontae Leach, in the entire league. But he is more fullback, he's not like a dual running back option. They got Randall Cobb, James Jones, and he was drafted by the Packers in real life. He was drafted by the Packers in my franchise. And then he became a 49er, and now he's back with the Packers. Then Julian Edelman and Posey. And then Jordan Cameron has just had a fantastic career because he was one of the main targets of Matthew Stafford. So I guess he played so well he got himself the superstar dev trait. So good for Jordan Cameron. Twiliolo and then McGrath. Then as the O-line, they got Okung, Rodney Hudson, Jamal Jackson. He needs to be replaced at some point. He's getting old. Lee Charles Bentley and Jamarcus Webb. On their defense, this is where they are crazy, is that they were a 3-4 before, I believe. Maybe. Were they? I don't know. Well, whatever it is. They have DeMarcus Ware and Von Miller and Kiko Alonso. But more importantly, Ware, Miller, and now Aaron Donald. They are loaded with, they have some of the best pass rushers in the league. It is hard to play against this team, especially when they have their pass defense ready. So they have their pass rushers are obviously Miller and Ware. Now Donald is there. Just make him tougher to you can get pressured very quickly. Vince Wilfork, Vernon Golston, Ellis. So they're weaker at ends right now. So they need to really fix that. I think they've lost some people too. But you got Brandon Browner, Fletcher, Jenkins, McCourty, Prater as cornerbacks, Usama Young, Nate Allen. So they probably could do a little better in some of these, like the defensive ends, safeties, but they're working on it. And then you got Zerline and Weatherford as your two special teamers. But Green Bay, they've been searching for some sort of spark, and they just haven't had it. They've had Antonio Brown, they had McCoy, they have Stafford, all these great players, and they've never done anything with it. So it's just utter disappointment, and we'll see if they can actually find a way to win. Now we go to the Panthers, and we're led by Flacco, Brody Croyle, and Zach Dysert. Croyle also a player that didn't do much in real life, but did a lot in my franchise. If you watch my videos before, you'll see he did a lot with the Detroit Lions before Tannehill. Then they got Kristen Michael and Jeremy Hill. Jeremy Hill. Yep. And then Medlin. They got T.Y. Hilton and Torrey Smith, two fast receivers for Flacco. Then it's Ogletree and Cooper. And then we've got Devin Thomas and Beckham. Bear Pasco, they got Cameron Brate, who lower overall than I thought he should be, but he's got the dev trait. Beckham. Best O-lineman there is DeCastro with Austin Howard. Then they got J.C. Treader, Charles Johnson, and Connolly. As for their defense, they used to be one of the top in the league. They've got D. Ford, Carlos Dunlap, Julius Peppers, who is how old? 34. So he's 86 overall, still kicking it with that high overall, but we know he's going to be gone sometime. They got Pat Sims, Brent, and then I think it's Brian Price. But then what happened was they had such a great pass rusher linebacking core before, and then I had to help their DBs, and I kept drafting more and more DBs. So now they're loaded with McCourty, Sam Shields, Chris Harris Jr., then they got Johnson and Carey. They signed Clay Matthews, which is just mind-blowing. So, like, one of the best pass rushers in the league, best linebackers. So, Clay Matthews was really going to help the Panthers maybe restore their former glory as one of the best defenses. They got Manti Te'o, Michael Okwo, who's been, like, with the Eagles and some other teams. Kind of a journeyman linebacker, but always been pretty reliable. Then you got Daniel Manning and Robinson, along with Michael Huff and Dowling. The fun story here was that I drafted, I think it was Michael Huff in the first round, and then I drafted Daniel Manning in the second round because I was a moron and drafted two safeties. But then they became the best safety duo in the entire league, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah. John Fox planned that to happen. But anyways, they have Catanzaro and Daniel Sepulveda as their special teamers. Now we go to the Patriots, and they missed the playoffs for the first time in many years last year. I was kind of disappointed to see that. But as you expect, they have Tom Brady, they got Yates, and they got McCarron. McCarron is like the Jimmy Garoppolo. Like, maybe will he replace Brady? We don't know. If they don't make the playoffs again, I don't know if this puts Bill Belichick in firing range. Or if, he did win them 2 Super Bowls in my franchise, so 3 total. But in real life, they had 3 Super Bowl wins at this point, but they also made the Super Bowl twice, and that was the 2 Giants ones. So in my franchise, they've only had 3 Super Bowl wins. They have not made the Super Bowl 2 more times. But they do have Jamal Charles, who is a great running back for them. They got Ridley, Hunt, and then Tony Hunt, and then Danny Woodhead, Brandon Tate, Devon Wiley, Chris Hogan. They drafted Jarvis Landry, who is going to be their saving grace this season, because they traded away Andre Johnson, who's been good for them for a while. But he's got older, and that's why he went to Cleveland. And I think because they got that 3rd-round pick, that helps them a lot. They got Lance Kendricks. They lost Pope. They got Tony Scheffler and Dreesen. Then Zach Streif, Marshall Yanda, Chris Chester, Chance Warmack, and then rookie Jake Matthews, who apparently does not have a dev trait, but he is a 1st-round left tackle. We'll see if he actually pans out for the Patriots. On defense, they got Mario Williams, Carradine, Odrick, Melton, and then Damon Harrison and Ellis. We'll see if maybe Melton gets like a DT opportunity. Bobby Wagner, Moton at mid-interior linebackers, and then Jermaine Cunningham, rookie Chris Kirksey, Thomas Davis Sr. Good safeties and Nick Collins, who was a Super Bowl MVP, and Greg Iloka. They got Corey Graham, greats. They do have Darrelle Revis. He had many different teams he could have gone to, and he went to the Patriots. Micah Hyde, I think. Yep, Micah Hyde. But really, they got, with Mario Williams, they got a solid, one of the better defensive linemen. Someone that should be able to help shut down the run. They got Bobby Wagner and the middle linebacker, and then they have Darrell Revis and Nick Collins as their DBs that should be able to shut people down. We got Nick Novak and Dave Zasterdill as the special teamers. Then we got the Oakland Raiders, the AFC champions. Let's take a look at their roster. And so we got ourselves, of course, Matt Ryan, Carson Palmer behind him, winning. And then you got Vereen, which Sean Green will be the starter. Okay, it's not doing it for me. I don't have to change it now. We're going back. So Sean Green, Shane Vereen. They also have Bernard Pierce. We have Julio Jones, Eric Decker, Andre Holmes, Robert Woods, Armand Binns. So again, Julio and Matt Ryan, just fantastic partnership there. Then Tyrone Armstead, they used to have Donald Penn. They traded him away because Penn is old. Armstead is like 23 years old. Then they drafted Suafailo. Again, he's not any dev trait. But Eric Wood, Marcus Cannon, Beluga, and then Vernon Davis, the X Factor tight end from 06. They got Charles Harbor and Anthony McCoy. Then you got Tyson Jackson, Star, Latulele, Jones, Barwin. They do have Michael Bennett as well. Bennett might move into DT range if because Jones is not doing too great there. Joe Hayden, he's the one that got like a interception, pick six in like the championship game. He was active in the Super Bowl as well. They got Morris Claiborne as well, so two great corners for them. Webster, Hogan, Moten. Conti and Trey Boston at strong safety. Reggie Nelson, Thomas at free. They got Courtney Upshaw, Ninkovic, Brian Cushing, who's been their anchor. Finally got to the Super Bowl. And Wilbur at right outside linebacker. And we got Gano and Michael Conan. I know we're almost approaching an hour on this video. I'll try to get this a little quicker there, trying to give you a good overview of who these teams are. So if you're sticking with me, I really appreciate you and your interest in this league. So then we got Andrew Luck here in St. Louis with Phillip Rivers behind him and Logan Thomas. Ben Tate, LaShore, Stacy Harper, Crabtree, Marvin Jones, Hakeem Nicks, Salas. They really haven't had changes in their receiving core in years. They probably need to do a better job of that. Then they've got Mitchell Schwartz being the left tackle. Winston Justice, Travis Frederick, Cooper, and then Alan Baubrey. Pretty decent O-line there. They do have Michael Bennett, who is a tight end. I think he's been with other teams before, and then he ended up being the starter here in St. Louis. Dennis Pitta and Jace Amaro. He's a second-round pick of this year. As for their defense, they used to be all like normal devs, so they have improved a lot defensively. So Robert Quinn, Ray Edwards, Geno Atkins, McDonald. They got Michael Brockers as well. I think Brockers will probably, he's not going to be number one, but he'll be the second one. And they got Jarvis Jones, Curtis Lofton, Bradham, and then Hitchens. I don't know why he's a hidden dev. But Sendejo, Southward, Rashad Johnson, Deshaun Gibson. And then cornerbacks, we got Flowers and Kyle Fuller, Culliver and Ebner. But again, their best strength here is their Atkins, Quinn, Brockers, and Ray Edwards, their D-line. And then we see Brett Kern and John or Josh Brown, I believe. I think it's Josh Brown as special teams. Then we got the Baltimore Ravens with Dan Quinn. So Dan Quinn here, trying to rebuild this team. Again, we got the two worst teams in the league, the Bengals and the Ravens. They really do need a quarterback. That's been their problem. They have Colin Kaepernick, and he's not doing it for them. Joe Webb and Fales. I mean, I guess if Kaepernick has a good year with Quinn, that could change things for his career. We got Ray Rice, we got Donald Brown, Thompson, and Ballard. Now, Rice, I'm going to give him the 2-game suspension because this is when he had the elevator incident, and I'm probably going to get rid of him. I'm going to do the same thing. So this is technically they don't have Ray Rice; they have Donald Brown. So Ray Rice is going to be injured, and then he's going to be released. Then you got Brandon Marshall, you got Dwayne Bowe, Avery Ellington, Cecil Shorts. So again, another hit for the Ravens not being successful is Ray Rice not being there. But then you got Valmer, Vasquez, Unger, Winters, and Cordy Glenn. Tight end wise, they're not looking too great. They got Kevin Boss, Escobar, and that's where Austin Seferian-Jenkins is going to need to step up. I probably will start him as the starting tight end because he's their pick that should be taking that role. Defensively, they got Ziggy Ansah, Jarrell Casey, Marcus Spears, and Spears was a top defensive lineman. He's regressed, but he was seen as a top superstar in the league. But Casey and Ansah, they drafted Khalil Mack with the second overall pick. So look out, Cleveland. You got, Alden Smith, Kelvin Shepard, Gerard Mayo, and then Khalil Mack. As for cornerbacks, they got Vontae Davis. I think it's Andrew Jackson, I think. Let's see. No, Asa Jackson. And then they signed Stanford Route from Cleveland. So Cleveland used to have Route, but now Route goes to the Ravens. So he's their starting cornerback and then Munderland behind him. Sands is gone because they gave up Ed Reed in free agency. So now Sands is filling the void there. And Bernard Pollard and then Rodney McLeod Jr. But really their linebacking front seven core is what is very solid with the Ravens. So, of course, Dan Quinn's going to have some fun with that team. And then there's Robbie Gould and Huber as the special teamers. Then we go to the Saints. Saints with Pat Shurmur in year 2. We're going to see how this team's shaped up after the offseason. They're pretty weak. They got some challenges. Now, Geno Smith is going to be the starter over Michael Vick despite the 13 points in overall. Geno Smith sat behind Byron Leftwich last season. The times he did play, he played fairly well, so he is a starter. But if he chokes up, Michael Vick's going to be right there for the starting job. And then B.J. Daniels. Then you got Kevin Smith, Isaiah Peed, Baker, and Randall. Then you got Darius Butler, Paul Richardson, and Sammy Watkins, the two wide receiver rookies. Watkins will be a starter. Richardson might be. We got Mark Mariani, Ace Sanders, and Clyde Gates. Then you got Andrew Whitworth at left tackle. Mike Adams behind him. Mike Gibson, Wallace, Bernadou, and Tony Hills. You can see a pretty bad O-line. Probably one reason why they fail. Then you got Greg Olson, Cumberland, and Barnage at tight end. Olson probably one of the better receiving options for this team. Poor Olson. Then you got Dan Williams. I think it's Michael Johnson, Mike Daniels, maybe. And then you've got Cameron Jordan and Crawford. Patrick Peterson, Robinson, Willie Gay, E.J. Biggers, and then Tyrone Branch, Kenny Vaccaro. But then you look at their linebackers. Old and not great. Dansby and Cole are old. Kawan Dawson and Robert McLean. So they really need some work on their linebackers. And they got Britton Colquitt. They're going to be punting a lot. And then Mason Crosby. So not too optimistic for you Saints fans with this team. Now we've got the Seattle Seahawks. Now this is a team that had a huge offseason. A lot of potential here. I know they're facing the Vikings week 1, which is a tough team. But this team, my friends, really got an overhaul. So they got Matthew Stafford, Glennon, and Lindley. They have Marshawn Lynch, so 2 X factors, quarterback and running back. Turbin, Gillespie, and Michael James. They've got Demaryius Thomas, Mike Evans, Devontae Adams, Josh Morgan, and Lockett. Brandon Pettigrew, the big tight end, with Agnew and Donald. They got Eric Fisher at left tackle, rookie Joel Bitonio, who should be hidden dev. I don't know who made this draft class, but Bitonio is one of the best guards in the league. He should be hidden dev. Then they have Samson Satelli, Aaron Sears, and Karimi. When they also have Cameron Fleming, one of their draft picks this year. Then they got Everson Griffin they signed. They got Dontari Poe and Austin from before, Chris Baker, solid D-line. They got Koamisi, Bishop, and Justin Tuck, and Osiu Mignora. Then their DBs are, Hayden, Finnegan, Miller. They've had better ones in the past. And then they got Wilson and Anderson. They used to be Troy Polamalu there, free safety, but they got rid of him a few years ago. They got Williams and Stanford. Special teams, Potter and Jarrett. So a lot of potential there with the Seahawks. We'll see if they're able to make something of this season. They have a very tough division there in the NFC West as well, so a lot of good teams there. And now we got Pittsburgh, the Steelers. They are rocking with Ben Roethlisberger still, even though he's been declining a bit, but he's an 84 overall. They got Matt Flynn and Mettenberger behind him. Lamar Miller, Trey Mason, Brandon Oliver, Hardesty, Todman, A lot of running backs they're carrying forward here. They've got Keenan Allen. I think that's John Brown, Vincent Brown, Michael Floyd, Dobson. They got a lot of tall receivers, and that's unlike Pittsburgh. They're normally the Emmanuel Sanders, Mike Wallace types, but this time I've built Pittsburgh to be tall. So Keenan Allen, Michael Floyd are like 6'4" each. Delaney Walker, no doubt the best tight end in the league, and behind him is Jared Cook, who is a good tight end for other teams. He's superstar dev, but he's hanging out here in Pittsburgh as a backup. I try to get him involved more often in the season. But then they got Ryan Clady, Allen, Dadish. Right behind him is Paradis, McQuistion, and Eric Winston. Defensively, they've got J.J. Watt. They've got Floyd, Miller, Doomerville. So a 4-3 because this is Lovie Smith's defense. They got Cameron Wembley from the Browns this offseason. Avery Williamson, Carter. They lost Brandon Spikes to the Bengals. So they lost their interior middle linebacker who was good for them. It would have been nice if they were able to pull in a middle linebacker like Shazier or the guy that the Ravens, CJ Mosley. But they got Kyle Van Noy, and so he's going to be hopefully developing into a future starter. But where they boast the most is their DBs. So you got Deshaun Goldson, and they just got Polamalu, first season with Pittsburgh in my franchise. Figure that's a nice retirement for him, so he can retire a Steeler. But Dante Whitner has been the shutdown, hard-hitting safety that fits Pittsburgh style the best. We got Orlando Scandrick, Marsh, Jones, Josh Norman there as DBs or cornerbacks for the Steelers. And then they have Justin Tucker and Sam Koch. Yes, Justin Tucker will stay on teams up until his scandal actually came out, and we'll see how it's handled in real life. And then we're going to go to the Texans. 3 more teams as we try to bring this video to a close. But we're going to go through the Texans right now. And this is a team that, again, they also need a quarterback because they're working with Mark Sanchez, who used to be with the Bills, then he bounced around the league a bit. Now he's bounced to the Texans. He's in his second season. He's at a pretty decent high morale at 78, but he doesn't play that great, so I'm kind of hoping to have a change there for Houston. They just missed this offseason. Then Enderle and Savage, they got CJ Spiller, Hunter, Lacey, and Taylor. They do have DeAndre Hopkins, who was in the running for Rookie of the Year. No, he was the Rookie of the Year when he was there. They had Earl Bennett, Stephen Hill, Alan Hearns, I think it's Titus Young. Then Jamal Brown, Taylor Lewan. So Lewan might move to a guard, but he's for this season, but he's the future left tackle. They had Earl Watford, Zane Beadles, Andre Levitre, Todd Hermans. Then their best tight end is Jermichael Finley. They got Anthony Fasano and Gordon, so they could use a solid tight end in the future. DB, they got Thomas, Bradley Roby, Josh Wilson, Sensabaugh. They got Clemens and Mike Doss at free safeties. Then they got Terrell Suggs, who's getting a lot older. I don't know, he's been like in the 80s for a long time, but he's 31 now. But they got Terrell Suggs. I mean, he could be a trade target. I might consider that this season if they don't have a good season. But Levante David, D'Amico Ryans, Nate Triplett, Quentin Copels, Robert Gaithers, Cam Thomas. They got Misthay and Chris Brown as kicker and punter. 2 more teams to go. We've got the Tennessee Titans. Tennessee were I think the third, or maybe they fell to the 4th seed, but they were one of the best teams in the league, led by Tavares Jackson. Gus Bradley is their head coach, but it's Jackson and Freeman. They have Jonathan Stewart, David Wilson, Roy Helu, and Ellington. They got one of the best receivers in the league behind Calvin Johnson. That's Greg Jennings. They also have Matt Slater, Denarius Moore, Kevin Norwood, Greg Childs, Jermaine Gresham. They got their tight end, Anobin and Fedorovich. Tennessee Titans did get Michael Orr, and Michael Orr, that was the blind side. He played for Tennessee, right? Yeah. Oh, no, he played for Ole Miss, but was from Tennessee. They got Danny Watkins, again, a guard that was a top pick, a first-round pick, but did not turn out to be that great. You got Ryan Khalil, Chilo Rochelle, and Pugh. Then in defense, they got D'Angelo Hall, Xavier Rhodes, Hosley, Brandon Harris, Wooten, LaRon Landry, one of the best safeties in the league. He's been with the 49ers, and then he left the 49ers, and they replaced him with Merriweather, and Landry went to the Titans here. You got Patrick Chung, Deion Buchanan. there at safety. So again, they have the replacement ready, whether it's a replacement for Chung or Landry. They got Bobby Carpenter, James Anderson, Anthony Spencer, Klein, Muhammad Wilkerson, Fletcher Cox, Jackson, Crick, Logan, Chapman, Ray McDonald. So they got some holes in this defense, but they do have some studs like 284 corners, an old one and a younger one. And then LaRon Landry, of course, is a beast. And then you got Chris Clue and Cody Parkey. And now for the last team, the Minnesota Vikings. So here we have with their lineup, they do have the league MVP, Robert Griffin III. He 86 overall. We got Ryan Mallett right behind him. He's got Doug Martin, Glenn Coffey, Green, and Taliaferro as their running backs. They got Doug Baldwin, Adam Thielen, Streeter, Brandon Cooks, Harry Douglas, and King. Rob Gronkowski, who of course has not had that great of a career in Minnesota as he had with Brady. But then there's Scott Chandler behind him and Kellen Davis. Nonetheless, Rob Gronkowski is still X Factor. He's still great. But you got Joe Staley, left tackle, Horton. I didn't mean to click him. Or Hugh Thornton. Center, they are working with Ryan Cook. They got Richburg there that could possibly replace him if he develops well. Davin Joseph, Anderson, Ryan Harris. Probably could use a better right tackle, but he's 80 overall, so his overall is good. He's just not going to be developing as fast. Then we look at their pass rushers. Fantastic. Lamar Houston, Linval Joseph, Sheldon Richardson, who's X Factor. Olivier Vernon, who actually went up to superstar dev. Surprised to see that. Dwight Freeney is on the team as well, and Nick Fairley is on the team. They do have Ernie Sims, Chad Greenway, Brad Jones, Chris Borland. They got Leon Hall, Randy Carmichael, Aqib Talib, Exum. Aqib Talib used to be with the Steelers in my franchise. Then he came over to the Vikings. You got Zibikowski and Pleasant, Will Allen and Cyprin. As for special teams, you got Matt Prater and Brandon Fields. So, who do you think is going to win each of the divisions? Do you have any bets you want to take? This league is always enjoyable to just kind of follow through. It takes a long time sometimes because you're playing practically 250 games for a season, and I play all of them. I do all offense, so I have my defensive controller on the defense, select a random play. I have coach suggest. I just play all offense. And so it's a very fun way to play. We are shaking things up. This is year 13. So there's a lot of history to this league, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it turns out. But thanks for watching. If you like this video, leave a like, subscribe to the channel. I'll probably be showing the individual games for week 1. So if you want to see highlights from them, I'll just post each individual game. I don't think I'll do that all year. I'll try to do maybe like some wrap-up videos that are quicker. But hey, thanks for watching. Hope you subscribe, and I'll hope to see you in the next video.